Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Reshma Saujani, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Brave, Not Perfect. Fear less, fail more, and live bolder. Now, Reshma is the founder and CEO of Girls Who Code, which is a national nonprofit organization working to close the gender gap in technology while teaching girls confidence and bravery through coding. She's been interviewed on NPR's Marketplace and featured in the New York Times, Forbes, Fortune, Fast Company, Real Simple, Glamour, Family Circle, The Daily Show, and much, much more. So let's welcome to the show, Reshma Saujani.
Thanks for having me, Marianne.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And my goodness, I loved your book. I mean, once I picked it up, I could not put it down.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Well, and, every parent, every aunt, every uncle, every educator needs to read this book because we've got to really change the dialogue with our young girls.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. I mean, you really realize how we raise our girls to be perfect and we raise our boys to be brave. And all you have to do is sit at a playground and we push our boys to, climb faster, you know what I mean, crawl to the top of the monkey bars. And we tell our girls to be careful, oh, honey, your dress is dirty. Come over here. Let me get something from the diaper bag and change it. Or, don't take that toy away from her. We are constantly protecting and coddling and literally wrapping our girls, with bubble wrap. And as they get older, because we celebrate girls for perfection, they get addicted to it. And when something doesn't come naturally to them, they start giving up before they even try.
That's just heartbreaking. Well, and before we go too far down the road, I would love to hear about your inspiration for writing this book, because there must have been something that was the catalyst for this.
Yeah, it was really, so I had an opportunity to do a TED Talk. And I mean, Miriam, from the time that I was 13 years old, I've been working on women's and girls issues. And in my late 30s, I was like, gosh, why isn't anything changing? And I spent my life with teenage girls, and Girls Who Code teachers started telling me the story. And this kind of light bulb went off in my head. It was, when girls were first learning how to code, something that many girls think is just really hard and that they can't do, every teacher would tell me the same story. She'd say, I'm teaching our girl how to code. And during the first week, a student would call her teacher over. And she'd look at her and she'd say, I don't know a code to write. And the teacher would look at her screen and she'd see a blank text editor. So if she didn't know any better, she would have thought, well, my student just spent the past 20 minutes just staring at the screen. But when the teacher pressed undo a few times, she saw that her student wrote code and then deleted it. So instead of showing the progress that she made, she'd rather show her nothing at all. It's this idea of perfection or bust. And so I told this story in my TED Talk, and it just blew up. We had millions of people watch, and so many people reached out to me, from cash registers who worked at Walmart to women who owned art galleries in Chelsea to dads, and everybody said, I do this. I see this in my daughter. I was raised this way. And I had to go deeper, and that's why I wrote this book.
Well, I'm so glad that you did, because, that dialogue really needs to change. And it's so, I think people don't really understand how different young girls and young boys are treated.
It's so true. This often is in the name of building confidence. So I think for a long time we thought, well, if my daughter's bad at gymnastics, I'm going to pull her out and put her to swimming. And that's going to make her feel better about herself. But what's happened is that girls have lost their resiliency, right? And they think that their mindset is fixed. I'm either good at something or bad at something. And what perfectionism is doing to us as women is, one, it's making us unhappy. Women are twice as likely to be depressed than men. And second, it's causing a leadership gap. We think that we have to be perfect to lead. It's why men will apply for a job if they meet 60% of the qualifications, and women, 100%. And so there are so many things that pass us by because we think that we're not ready.
Well, and I love that you brought that up, the leadership gap, because it was interesting reading your book. I mean, you talk about how, young girls, how well they do in school, and there's a little bit, because they're not being taught how to be brave, and they've got that perfectionism hat on, so to speak, and how difficult it is then to move into points of leadership because they're trying to be so perfect.
Yeah, I mean, Carol Dweck has this amazing quote where she says, if life was one big grade school, women would rule the world. But it's not, right? And what moves the needle in the real world is bravery. It's raising your hand for a new assignment at work, even though you're kind of slipping out because it's out of your comfort zone. It's about basically, or leaving your job when you're doing well because you're not really excited about it, or there's something else you want to do that you've always dreamed about. It's about running for school board because you want to do something for your community, but you're afraid that you'll lose that election. I mean, that's what matters, right, in the real world. It's really bravery and putting yourself out there. It's not perfection. It's not being careful and being, really risk averse and thinking about every step before you take it.
Well, and on that note, what are some of the differences that boys and girls view failure? I mean, because I know there's some massive differences there.
Well, I think that we have taught, because we've wanted to toughen our boys up and make them strong, they are not freaked out by a challenge. Or when they try something and it doesn't come to them right away, that doesn't bother them. So, for example, studies will show that when women sign up for a major, if they don't get an A in an introductory class but get a B instead, they're likely to drop out. Whereas boys are like, I got a B. That's amazing. It doesn't bother them. It doesn't prevent them. It doesn't hinder them in the same way that it hinders us.
That is a lot of stress to be putting on our young girls, that you have to, exceed, you have to get all A's, and you have to, excel in everything that you do. And if you don't, then don't pursue that, pursue, other things when maybe that's where their heart's more drawn to.
And yet even worse, when you do everything perfect, why aren't you happy? I mean, I know so many teenage girls who are like, I'm captain of my soccer team. I have gotten straight A's. I'm a size 2. My Instagram, my Instagram stories always get 1,000 likes. Why am I still unhappy? And that's the key, right? Like in this success-driven society, it's not, what's upsetting them is not getting into Harvard. It's about the fact that they don't have joy in their life. And I think that there's a lot of joy that comes out of being brave, even when things don't work out, because 95% of the time it's not going to work out. But you're not going to have this regret. I know, look, I feel like so much of what happens with us as women is like we have things that we want to do, dreams that we have, whether it's starting a business or maybe even not starting a family, and we don't do them, right? We pursue other people's dreams, and we see other people doing the very thing that we wanted to do, and they're succeeding at it. And it leaves us with so much regret and envy, and it eats us up inside. And that's what I want this book to stop, right? That's what I want. I want it to inspire women to find their truth, to do their thing, regardless of the outcome, so that they don't have a life of regret and envy.
Gosh, I mean, I think every woman on the planet needs this book. Because, I mean, I think regardless what your age is, it really is something to reflect on, because are we living the life that we choose to live, that empowers us, that motivates us, and makes us happy? Or are we doing kind of like how you're talking about, a life where it's kind of pre-designed because people are expecting us to do certain things?
Right. Or it's like toxic people pleasing. I mean, I was speaking in Philadelphia yesterday, and I asked everyone in the room, how many of you in the past week have gotten bumped into on the street or at work, and you've said, I'm sorry? Every hand raised. All of us have done that. I've even done that, right, in the past week. And what happens is when that happens, you walk away like, God, you're mad at yourself. Why did I say sorry? Why didn't I stand up for myself? Why didn't I, you know what I mean? Like, and it's the what of, should have, could have, that just eats us up inside. And it's all often in the name of we don't want to make somebody feel bad. We don't want someone to think we're a bitch, right? We don't want someone to think we're ambitious. it's often in the name of being liked, but being liked isn't getting us anywhere.
Well, it's so important to have this dialogue because it's different when men become ambitious, as opposed to women. And it's interesting when we look at these things, we need to change some of the words that are said in regards to our young women and having them making sure that they chase their dreams without being labeled. It's like, hey, go for it. Be brave.
Go for it.
Yeah.
It's true. One of my favorite stories in the book was a story from Ohio, and this mom was telling me how she was sitting in her sixth graders' award ceremony. And when the boys would win an award, they would literally walk up onto the stage and they'd do like the dab. You know what I mean? And when the girls won an award, they would walk up on stage and be like, oh, who, me? Right? It's that like, quote, fake modesty, right? Because they think that they're supposed to behave that way. Whereas boys feel completely free to just be like, yeah, I got it. I got this, right? And you see that same pattern extend when we're older and into the workforce, where we don't take credit for our accolades. We don't brag about our accomplishments. We don't ask other people to basically, we don't ask for the promotion. We don't ask for the raise. And we put everybody's interest before ours, and we pretend that we're not ambitious. We pretend that we don't have dreams. We pretend that we don't have things that we want to do in our life.
That is so true. And so it has me thinking, you talk about this in your book. There are certain myths to perfection. And I'd love for you to share what some of those are because, I think when people hear this and they buy your book, Brave, Not Perfect, and they start reading it, they're going to be able to identify, what, I think I've got some of this. Maybe these are things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the first is like, if I'm polished, I'll be perfect. We spend so much time thinking about the way we look and our hair and our body and everything. And for some reason, we think that when we look the way that we're supposed to look or we think we should look, that we'll be perfect and happy. And for many of us, it's just not true. The second thing is I think that we feel like, well, when I am perfect, I will be happy. I felt that way. I woke up at age 33, the perfect immigrant daughter, went to the right schools, the right job, and I found myself coming home every day in the fetal position. I was miserable. And I literally thought my life was over. And I didn't understand because I was like, wait a minute, I've done everything everyone told me to do. Why do I feel this way? I think we also think that if we're not perfect, everything will fall apart. I have a 4-year-old son, so I carry a lot of mommy guilt. And I travel the country. I'm a CEO. I'm a working mom. Like, I'm a mess half the time, right? And I put so much pressure on myself, to make sure that when it's Sean's birthday, that I'm, instead of picking up cupcakes from Whole Foods, like I'm trying to find time to bake them. And it's just, there's so much I put, or, red eyes that I fly just so I could be up in the morning to take him to school. And it's like, again, because I constantly feel like a horrible mom. And, all of these things have just made me realize that, we put perfectionism puts way too much weight on our shoulders. And even when we are, quote, perfect, we're still broken inside.
And that is so true. I mean, there's so much that girls, young women, and women put on their shoulders as far as, what's expected of them. And, there's not that same amount of pressure I feel that's put on young men, the expectations. We were bombarded all day long with ways that we should look, how thin we should be, how perfect we need to be. And it really puts the focus on this exterior as opposed to our inner happiness.
Yeah, and it's so much worse with social media, right? I mean, it's just a few minutes of scrolling to get your anxiety up. My niece is 16 years old, and she will, delete a post if it doesn't get 500 likes. I find myself, when I post something, constantly checking, for validation. And it's really, really, really made us have more anxiety. When I was doing focus groups for this book, I was shocked at how many women in their 20s and 30s told me that they had not one, but 2 Instagram accounts. One for their real life and one for the life that they wanted others to think that they had. I mean, gosh, you know how stressful that is.
That is, I mean, it's hard enough managing one. I could imagine doing two.
Yeah, but it's why for me I started doing this thing called Failure Fridays on Instagram to, because there's this idea of like there's like almost like negativity shaming, right, online. Like if you talk too much about your real life, you know what I mean, people don't like it. They just want to see the beautiful picture and the happy marriage and, the job that you love and your perfect child, and even though all of it is fake, right, and not true. And so I've been doing these Failure Fridays to kind of just start getting people to think about celebrating failure, or sharing your brave, not perfect messages. And it's awesome because that's real and authentic and true.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, and we've kind of touched on this already, but, when young boys, when they view failure, it's kind of like, no big deal, move on, and for young girls, it can be like earth-shattering.
Yeah, it's earth-shattering. Yeah, I mean, and there's a real cost. I always say in Silicon Valley, right, like you're more likely to get funded the more failures you've had as a man. But as a woman, it's like, oh, right, because you're already coming in with so much doubt. And we punish women who have failed a lot more. People always, I ran for office twice and lost twice. And when I think about my next race, people always say, well, be careful, because if you lose again, like that's it. And I'm like, well, didn't Abe Lincoln lose like 11 times before he won? Or it's very, very different. It's very different for women than it is for men. But that's because I think when you are brave, when you do embrace your failure, you're an outlier. And that's why I want this book to create a bravery revolution. If we were all that way, if we weren't feeling shameful about the things that didn't work out for us, if we were embracing our failure, if we weren't letting it prevent us, if we were building our bravery muscles, seeing, brave, not perfect women would be the norm and not an outlier. And that's like the world I want to create.
Oh, I want to live in that world.
We can. I'm telling you, I have been living my life this way, and I'm so much more happier. And it's not that like everything has changed for me. And I'm not telling you it doesn't hurt sometimes to get rejected, and but it's just I don't have that pit in my stomach. Like I always say to women, think about where you're feeling envious or who you're feeling envious about. And I know it's hard, but go there. That's where you should be. That's where you should be. And so I've reduced the envy in my life. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that immediately has created so much joy for me. And I think we as women, we hold so much regret and envy because of perfectionism. Because we're waiting for the right time to take that step or try that. I mean, you even think about this, like, think about hobbies. Like every man I know has a hobby that he likes, but he's not good at. Tennis, fantasy football, golf, you know what I mean? Basketball. And they're not good at it. They're mediocre at it. Even for us, we don't even have hobbies that we like that we aren't good at, right? Like so many women have said to me, I'm not going to that fitness class till I'm in shape. And I'm like, the point of going to a fitness class is to get in shape. Do you know what I'm saying? But can you imagine just having the freedom to like go to yoga class and not be hard on yourself because you can't do a headstand or a child's pose, but you just like the breathing? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, do you know how awesome that would feel to like go about life that way?
Tina, and how much freedom comes with that, where you're able to say, you know what, maybe I don't have the perfect yoga body or I can't do the perfect poses, but I'm showing up and I'm enjoying it. I'm just enjoying the experience,
Yes. And I really do think we can. I think we can get to that world. But part of it is, I think, realizing it, and it's funny how much I think the funny thing about this idea is that people know. When I start my talks and I say, how many people think they're a perfectionist, and everyone raises their hand. And we know that it's not good either. We know that it's not a badge of honor, right? We know that it's actually creating a lot of pain in our lives. And I think so much of what we've been given as women with a lot of these books is management books, success books to help us get that promotion and, get that job you've always in that corner office. Really what we need is joy. and happiness. That's what that's really what's keeping us from, I feel like, world domination. You know? That's why I think this book is so important.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. I was just actually going to say that because, I mean, it teaches women to look for things that, go basically to live a little bit more bolder and be able to find that happiness. Go after your dreams. If you want to be an astronaut, go for it. If you want to be in tech, you can do that too. There's no boundaries.
Yep. I couldn't agree more.
Well, and so, we've talked and we've covered so much. What are some of the ways that you think that young girls can give themselves permission to move out of being perfect, just being okay with themselves?
So I think the first thing is practice imperfection. So for girls, I have this, if you feel like you're not good at something and your every bone in your body is telling you to move on from it and go to the next thing, stop yourself. Make yourself sit with it, whether it's a math assignment or a toy you're trying to put together or a game you're playing. Like, don't let yourself walk away from a challenge. And kind of part of that too is like, going back to this idea of like, doing something you stink at. If you're in a gymnastics class or a basketball class or a soccer class and you're not number one, it's okay. Don't switch. Feel what it's like to be mediocre, but have joy in the thing that you are doing. And the third thing is like in your life, and I do this, start soliciting feedback, critical feedback. Everybody in my world or, at Girls Who Code knows that, like, if I give a speech or something, I want people to rate me. And I want you to not give me a 10. I want you to tell me what I could have done better. So if you start getting used to, criticism or feedback, right, it's not going to feel so personal when you get it later in your life.
Yeah. Well, and it really starts to kind of, make things, a little bit, you get a little tougher. You get a little bit of a tougher skin. And it's not a big deal. It's not like they're saying no to you or, when you get a no in sales, it could be, just no right now or, or whatever the situation is,
Yeah. And I think as parents, it's hard for us, right? Because in some ways, to build resiliency, you got to let them mess up. You got to let them fail. And I see this with my sister, if my niece isn't doing her college application or isn't doing her internship application, it's like her instinct is to go do it for her. And I'm like, hold up a second. You know what I mean? Like, she needs to know what it's like to, like, not get that job, not get her dream. And so we keep wanting to fix things for girls. Like, again, I think our nature is to help them, right? Is to protect them, physical protection and then emotional protection. And so we have to pull ourselves back from that instinct that we have.
Yeah, because it really is doing them a disservice.
It's doing them a huge disservice. I really feel like the way that we've been raising our girls has been right. And I've seen this for 6 years with many of our students. And I've seen how coding is such a metaphor for failure, right? Because most people think you have to be some genius to do it. And girls, often we don't see ourselves that way, even if we are. So they're coming in with what they think is an aptitude deficit. And then secondly, it's a process of iteration and failure. Again, something that girls are not used to. They're used to getting things right away. And so even in a few weeks, just teaching them to code changes their entire mindset about how they go about living their lives and the things that they pursue. And I've seen it happen instantaneously. And I think, for us that are in our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, great, learn how to code. That might be a way. But for us, too, it's about putting something back into our lives that is like coding, something that we think is hard. We think we can't do. It's impossible. I'll never be able to do that. And having that feeling of what it feels like to even do it for a second, you know what I mean? Or even just try. It feels really good. And it just opens up a whole other world of opportunity and possibility.
It has to be so empowering for young women to get to that point where they're realizing, coding isn't that hard. I can do this.
Yes. And then they do crazy things like go to Cambodia and start teaching orphans to code or build their own app and put it into the Apple Store, or tell, a CEO that his, wireframe or that her code sucks. I mean, it just opens. I mean, parents have told me that their daughters have just transformed by this experience.
Well, women and young girls bring a different narrative to every discussion. So they look at things from a different viewpoint than men do. So without having women and young girls at the table, being able to not only code, but, stand up in their lives and be braver, I mean, our society is missing out on so much.
So much innovation, so much thought, so much thinking, so much love, so much compassion, so much. And that's why I really feel important about this movement, because I just think that there are structures in society, racism, sexism, that we have to fight, and that we're fighting. And then there's a body of work that these structures have done a number on us that we have to start to unwind. We are this way because of culture, because of society, not because we've chosen to be this way. And so part of it is just recognizing that and saying, okay, I am going to work to change this. And I know I fall on and off the brave, perfect wagon all the time. I think I'm being real brave, and then something will happen, and I'll start my toxic people pleasing again. You know what I mean? Or my guilt, or my fear of being rejected or failing, and then I'll get back on the wagon. But it's a practice. It's a practice about having a way of life and a way of being, and we have to be forgiving with ourselves too as we're on this journey.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because it's really easy for that inner dialogue to kind of click back to the learned behavior going, well, you really should be a people pleaser, or, what do you think you're doing? And it's nice for young girls and women to hear that, you are even having to work on it every day. It's something
every day.
For all
every day. Even right now, as I'm so busy with this book tour and talking about this book, if someone's like, can I talk to you for 10 minutes about, and I'm like, can we do it in June? You know what I mean? And I still feel guilt about that. You know what I mean? And it's just it never ends. And but I'm more generous to myself. I'm not like, oh my God, why are you feeling guilty? Because it is it's a practice, and it's decades of being raised a certain way, of unlearning a habit or a way of being. But it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Do you see a lot of parents coming to you and educators going, gosh, I wish I had this book 20 years ago?
Yeah, but I also feel like people I'm glad I have this book now, because it's never too late. I have 7-year-old women who've read my book and now are opening up, selling jam at their local market, because that's been their dream. I had a woman who said to me yesterday in Philly that she loves to golf, but the only person that she plays golf with is her husband, because she's not a good golfer, and that she's not going to go out and start playing golf with other people. I think it's just it opens up your world, and it doesn't matter how old or young you are. It's never too late to start being brave, not perfect.
Well, I want to applaud you for this book. I think it is a game changer. It's changing a lot of people's lives. And Reshma, before we go, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Sure. Well, start following our movement on Instagram and Twitter at Reshma Saujani. Hashtag your experiences, brave, not perfect, so we can follow you and root you on. Buy our book, come to our events. Share this book with someone you love. Go to our website, reshmasaujani.com, to find more information. But and hopefully we'll be coming to a community near you to talk about this.
Well, if not, I know that's something that people can reach out and schedule, so they can see about if it's a possibility. I know you've got a busy schedule, but maybe it's something they could come out.
And you can listen to our podcast too. So we're going to be bringing this movement everywhere. And I'm also hoping women grab this book. And there's so many women who've taken this book to especially during Women's History Month, right? It's a great opportunity to start a book club, start having a conversation, start becoming brave, not perfect, accountability partners for one another. We can do this.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Well, Reshma, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful speaking to you.
Well, thank you, Reshma. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Brave Not Perfect. Now, Brave Not Perfect is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.